We all love a good archaeological discovery. Every time something significant is found in the ground, it tells us a little more about the places and people who existed before us, and laid the foundations of the lives we enjoy today. An archaeological discovery doesn't have to be ancient in order for it to be amazing. It just has to make you sit back and say, wow. Every discovery you're about to see in today's list has the wow factor. So enjoy this collection of spectacular archaeological finds from all over the world. At some point in ancient Chinese history, it must have been said that you could judge the quality of a person by the number of horses that were sacrificed in their honor when they died. That would explain why there are a whole 600 horse skeletons at the tomb of Duke Jing of Ji, which has been in the process of being excavated since early 2019, after initially being discovered in 1964. The Duke was the ruler of the state of Xi from the year 547 BCE to 490 BCE. But during those years, he was known as Lu Quju Jiang. He only gained the honorary title of Duke after he passed away. He was largely credited with bringing peace and prosperity to the region after a period of turmoil brought on by a battle between previous co-rulers Xing Feng and Kui Shu. This may explain why he was afforded what the ancient Chinese would have considered a generous sacrifice when the time came to bury him. As well as all the horses, there are also 2 pigs and 30 dogs, making this the largest animal sacrifice dedication to a single person in all of China. Animals are only one type of offering that was made to the gods in times of antiquity. Just about every object and substance you can imagine has been tried as a tribute to the deities at some point in history, including huge lumps of butter. Butter tributes were common in ancient Scotland and Ireland, and some of them are still buried in the ground. Irishman Jack Conway came across this 22-pound egg-shaped butter lump in Emlog Bog, County Meath in 2016, and initially believed it was cheese because of its strong odor. Experts at the Irish National Museum informed him that it's actually butter. It's around 2,000 years old, and if he was feeling hungry, he could try a bit, because it was technically still edible. Understandably, Jack passed on the offer. The location of the bog would be considered no man's land between 3 separate Irish kingdoms 2,000 years ago, and so it was probably buried by someone who hoped to claim the area and was seeking the blessing of the gods to do so. When we refer to ancient Greece as ancient Greece, we oversimplify the issue of what ancient Greece was. The Greece of thousands of years ago went through many social and political changes, and we're still in the dark about many of them. Even now, as we begin a new decade, we are still having to reassess what we know of early Greek culture because of a discovery made in December 2019. The discoveries were the resting places of 2 so far unknown individuals who were considered so important that they were buried in tombs lined with gold leaf 3,500 years ago. The tombs were found in Pylos, not far from the final resting place of the so-called Griffin warrior, whose burial site was discovered in 2015 and contained more than 3,000 pieces of treasure, ranging from weapons to jewelry. They were once dome-shaped, but collapsed centuries ago and were subsequently covered in foliage, preventing their discovery until now. Not only is this a lot of gold by ancient Greek standards, but some of the gold artifacts depict 16 pointed stars, a symbol that's known to have been important in Greece as of around 600 BCE, but not this early, or not until now anyway. A classic philosophical question is, what came first, the chicken or the egg? It's a difficult one to answer, but we know that chicken eggs have been around for a very long time. Here's an example of a still complete one found in Aylesbury, England, dating back 1,700 years to the time of Roman occupation. The egg was one of 4 found during archaeological work at a site in the town, but the other 3 had already broken open and still reportedly had a foul odor even after so many years in the ground. The focus of the ongoing work at the site is an ancient pit, into which people used to toss objects for good luck, just as many people do today with wishing wells. Apparently, eggs were among those totemic objects. Because the pit was heavily waterlogged, many of the items at the bottom of it are still spectacularly well preserved, which explains why the patterning on the shell of the egg is still so clearly visible. When it was found, it was still in a woven basket. As eggs were associated with fertility and rebirth according to ancient Roman culture, it's likely that whoever threw the basket into the pit was trying or hoping to start a family. Archaeologists often specialize within a specific topic or period of history, and so when they describe something they've discovered as the find of the millennium, they should usually be taken with a pinch of salt. Someone working in another archaeological field will almost certainly disagree with them. That being said, this 2,000-year-old Iron Age shield found in Yorkshire, England in December 2017 is definitely a stunning discovery. It comes from a warrior's grave that also contained the remains of his chariot and 2 of his horses. For many years, it's been debated whether decorated shields like this one, which contains an intricate pattern of swirls and raised features, were purely ornamental, or whether they were used in combat. The presence of a puncture hole on this shield, along with evidence that the shield had been repaired at least twice, seems to settle that argument. The remains of the warrior were also found at the grave and have been dated back to around 300 BCE. He was almost certainly a member of the Parisi tribe, of which very little is known, and so the grave is a priceless source of information about their culture. Objects buried in shallow earth are often found by civilians, or archaeologists who know where to look. But when something has been buried much more deeply, it often takes major construction works to bring them to the surface. That was the case with this collection of ancient Greek artifacts discovered during the construction of a metro network below the streets of Thessaloniki in April 2019. The most astounding discoveries are ornate statues of Aphrodite, the famous ancient Greek goddess. But there are also rings, gold wreaths, and countless pieces of pottery. So many artifacts have been discovered that the metro project has had to be delayed while archaeologists come in to extract everything from the ground safely. Aside from the objects, researchers also discovered the Decumanus Maximus Stone Road that would have been the main street in the city during the 6th century, and the remains of what may have been the city's first ever Christian church. Taken together, the artifacts demonstrate that Thessaloniki was once a powerful trading city and center of religion, and likely remained so for 1,000 years before falling from prominence in the medieval era. Most of us are guilty of thinking that tax avoidance by the wealthy is a modern era problem, but the truth is that tax avoidance has existed for as long as the concept of taxation. In fact, experts from the British Museum believe that tax avoidance is the most likely reason that $5 million worth of Norman-era coins turned up in a field in Somerset, England in January 2019. Adam Staples and Lisa Grace, a couple of experienced metal detectorists, stumbled over the find by accident and were amazed when they found out that their find was the largest ever discovered from the period following the Norman conquest. There are over 2,500 coins in the collection, some of which bear the head of William the Conqueror and are therefore exceptionally rare. Given that they were stored together, they were likely buried by a wealthy landowner hoping to avoid paying taxes on his hoard. For whatever reason, the landowner never came back to retrieve his coin collection, and so it lay undisturbed until Adam and Lisa came along almost 1,000 years later. Here's another concept that's been around for a lot longer than people tend to assume it has. Baby bottles. These cute drinking vessels found in Germany were once used to store milk and serve it to infants, and even have animal designs to make them more attractive to babies. Traces of milk from domesticated animals have been found inside the vessels, which date back to the Bronze Age and are around 3,200 years old. As very little is known about what was fed to infants during this era, they're a priceless window into the past and show us that actually not that much has changed when it comes to how we approach the difficult task of persuading a baby to take its milk. Any baby who had one of these to keep it fed was lucky. Back then, only approximately 1/3 of all infants were expected to survive their first year, and even then, only half would make it through to adulthood. The sophistication of the design confirms something, though. These near-prehistoric people loved their children just as much as we love ours today. Some controversy surrounds the authenticity of this next discovery, but we'll report it at face value. If the scientists and researchers of Bulgaria are correct about this discovery, then the very first golden treasure in history was created in northeast Bulgaria by the Varna people and is approximately 7,000 years old. That would not only make this the world's oldest human-made gold, it would also give the Varna a strong claim to being the oldest of all the European civilizations. The collection of golden treasures is diverse, including beads, animal designs, rings, and necklaces. The stories say that the whole collection was found by chance during the late 1970s when a cannery was being built in the region, and 22-year-old Reho Marinov picked them up with his excavator. He stored them in a shoebox for a few days before taking them to a local archaeologist. That qualified him for a financial reward equivalent to 7 times his monthly salary. Perhaps the most surprising object in the whole collection is a golden boomerang, which buries the idea that the device is an Australian invention. There's also some controversy about the so-called Jaguar God Cave of Chichen Itza in Mexico. It's known that the site was found by farmers in 1966, but for reasons that have never been clear, the authorities chose to wall up the site and prevent anyone from gaining entry for more than 50 years. Predictably, that's led to some suspicions that something was found in the cave that the authorities would prefer we never saw for ourselves. Now it's been reopened. The objects we have been allowed to see are 1,000-year-old Mayan artifacts, some of which are in pristine condition thanks to being sealed up in their underground bunker for centuries. The name Jaguar God Cave comes from its many sculptures of Balamku, who, as you've probably already guessed, was a jaguar god in ancient Mayan culture. Other items waiting in the darkness included grinding stones, incense holders, and several ornate decorative plates. We'll never know why archaeologist Victor Segovia Pinto went along with the order to seal it with rocks, or what he found in there when he entered in 1966. He's sadly no longer with us to share his secrets. Given all the Mayan, Inca, Olmec, and Mesoamerican people who once lived in South America, there are several contenders for the title of oldest city of the Americas. But there can only be one winner. The winner is Caral in the Supa Valley of Peru, which you may sometimes hear referred to as Caral Chupacigaro. Archaeologists believe that the first people came to settle in the city approximately 4,500 years ago, and it eventually grew to home a population of around 3,000. For the time, that was enormous. The temples, plazas, streets, and houses that were built here were created during the same years the ancient Egyptians were building their pyramids. At the center of the site is a tall temple, 92 feet high and 500 feet deep. At every other site like this in South America, weapons have been found buried in and around temples and plazas, but there are none at Caral. The Andean people who lived here must have been peaceful souls. Sadly, that probably left them wide open to attack. A farmer in Norway got a huge shock at the end of 2019 when he found out that the field he'd been working on and tending to for years had a huge Viking ship buried just beneath it, and the ship had been there for 1,000 years. The vessel, which is over 50 feet long, was found by way of a happy accident. Archaeologists in the area were using ground-penetrating radar in the hope of finding evidence of an old settlement they thought once stood close to Idoi. But they found the boat instead. Both ends of the boat have been damaged by plows in the centuries it's been down there, but aside from that, it's largely unharmed and appears to have been placed there deliberately as the centerpiece of a burial mound. The design of the ship is typical of the era for the Vikings, who were known and feared for their ability to make ships that could move quickly and take enemies by surprise. It's known that Harald Fairhair, the first true king of Norway, had 2 major military victories in Idoi, and so the boat and its mound were probably dedicated to the memory of someone who had served the king well in battle. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, and you will be the first to know when a new video comes out. Thank you for watching, and see you soon.